All right, welcome to Halitics on this Wednesday, hump day, 31st day of May. There, I got the date right. Tomorrow, Carlos will be with us. Carlos Child's a good friend of mine in Southern Maryland, great organizer. We'll be talking about a hopeful, possible coalition of African Americans, other people of color, and white working class Americans. Is that possible? Can we do it? That's going to be our discussion tomorrow, and I'm looking forward to it with Carlos. He is very astute and will have a lot of great food for thought. Today, though, we're going to talk about this dirty debt ceiling deal. Done dirt cheap. Yeah, it looks like a dirty deal done dirt cheap for sure, at least from my perspective. Giving away the store for very, very little. That is also what James K. Galbraith has to say in The Nation magazine, and he is actually even more critical of the debt ceiling deal that Joe Biden and Kevin McCarthy reached than I am in certain areas, and also he kind of spins it in a way that I think is too easy on the congressional Democrats, while putting all the blame, and certainly much of the blame is dependent on is justified by Biden's actions. He does deserve blame. Whether he deserves as much blame, and only the only blame, as far as I can tell, that Galbraith levies on Democrats is a very different question, and one I don't agree with Galbraith on. We'll get to that. I want to let you know why I was late this morning. I was actually downtown DC, that is, at a rally against that dirty deal, and specifically we talked about this yesterday with Maury Johnson, the MVP, the Mountain Valley Pipeline, the dispensation there given to Joe Biden's friend, obviously a close friend of his, Joe Manchin, to simply ramrod through the Mountain Valley Pipeline, over 300 miles through really nice wilderness areas, beautiful areas, not perhaps for much longer. Lots of waterways, waterlands, wetlands in West Virginia and Virginia, largely now will be sacrificed for this debt deal if it passes. And right now, the signs don't look good at all. Now, I have not been following. If you've been following this, maybe there's some news. I have been so busy getting ready for this program to try to present to you the best possible live stream I can do, with also fewer tech issues. I know we had some the other day with Catholic Jack. That was hopefully a one-off problem. Yesterday, the audio was good when we had Maury on, and when we could hear Maury, but he was in a bad spot. We're going to sync that audio up, though, with the video. That's where it wasn't good. The sound was good, but it wasn't synced with the video. And Vernon Bohr, of course, we had him on last week, and he was a great guest. We'll have Vernon on again from California shortly, but he, for just out of the kindness of his heart, took it upon himself to fix up that video. So hopefully it'll be resolved. If not, I'll work on it if I have to. But for now, I'm perfectly content to let Vernon take the lead in preparing the sync issue, to syncing up the video with the audio in, was it yesterday? Yeah, yesterday's program with Maury. All right, if you want to join me, I really want to talk to you. 240-363-7190 today. I have no guests lined up. I'm not sure if I'll go a full hour. We'll see. It's possible. I'll try very, very hard not to overstay my welcome and be out of here by 3 p.m. As I mentioned, I was downtown fighting the dirty deal. I did not have the you-know-whats that the folks you're going to see in this video had, however, but let's play it. This is at a Sustainable Week event in D.C., and of course, it's really just greenwashing. BlackRock there, they have massive investments in oil and gas and coal. They are not planning to divest, but to continue to profit from the burning up of our planet. Simple as that. And there were going to be Biden administration representatives at this event. They were scheduled to be there, including John Podesta, of course, one of Hillary Clinton's closest advisors for many years, and Ali Zaidi as well. But they didn't show up. They chose not to come. And I think the reason was they knew there was going to be a protest. They knew there was going to be a rally, and they didn't feel like dealing with it. So here it is inside the Renaissance Hotel in Washington, D.C. And again, let's hope that audio works. We had some problems yesterday. Let's see if they're ironed out. Let's hope so.
Is it all right if we ask them to be politely removed? How many of you would support that?
All right, so they're trying to get rid of our activists there. There are 4 brave activists holding the Biden End Fossil Fuel sign. This is at the This is at I wouldn't say a shareholders meeting. $600 a plate. $600 breakfast. Okay, so that's who's at this. These are big time these are big time investors. I'm impressed they got in. I think one of them may have actually paid that ticket. I'm not really sure how that happened, but they did manage to squeeze into this room despite great efforts by the security at the Renaissance Hotel to prevent us. And they were there. They were out in force. There were police all over when we were outside, chanting, singing, holding signs, but they could not keep these brave and really relentless activists out. And I'd like to know from you, by the way, call in if you can, 363-7190. Is this something you think is valuable? Does this make a difference? I hope it does. I think it does. Maybe some people think 3 times, especially if you're in the investor class and you've got so much money anyway. Maybe you're like, hey, another $5 million, $10 million that I can make out of this deal. Maybe it's not worth it for my great-grandchildren to never know the joys of skiing. So again, it's not about their caring about the planet, but maybe out of their own self-interest, maybe they'll reconsider some of the worst excesses of the fossil fuel economy.
Okay, I'm going to ask you politely, please.
We are here
We've asked
to
you
be
politely to join us.
disruptive to business as usual. It is time for the sustainability community to do a lot more to hold the people accountable for their double speak.
This is democracy, folks. We welcome
president
participation.
has refused to do the bare minimum. The bare minimum. So we are asking you as the sustainability community to join us in direct actions to disrupt business as usual. Please help us. Can you say what's
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. We got your message. You have succeeded in disrupting business as usual. I think we can all agree on that. All right. So forgive me.
Live on this land, so please take a stand to save our home. Can you save your home? Save your home. You live off this land, so please take a stand.
All right, so that was where the clip just sort of abruptly ended. I think the person who was videoing it may have been, disrupted for a moment and could not continue. I think that's incredibly powerful. I'm proud. I was part of that event. I was, of course, not, as you could see, standing up there. I didn't have that, that much, in my pants to be up there like those great activists. But hopefully, I'll in the future, I think I will be a little braver and get out there and really try to disrupt these events. And I thought they did it so well, saying, hey, you're part of the sustainability community, because that's how it was touted, right? This is a sustainable investor event. And their idea of sustainability is we're going to get to net zero emissions by 2050. Far too late. We're already way in the midst of far too much GHG, causing the 6th grade extinction, causing massive disruptions, billions of dollars in expenses, homelessness, death, because of our continued use and abuse of fossil fuels. So 2050 is simply out of the question. That's where I guess the Biden administration is too. Also, net zero really doesn't get us anywhere. We really have to get to just flat out zero. Net zero means, yeah, we continue to burn, but we plant as many trees. Well, no. You got to plant the trees and stop burning. So this was a great event. I'm really really proud I got to be part of it. I do hope you'll weigh in. Do you think that that's worth doing? Do you think there's real value? I do. You got to do something. And maybe, just maybe, a few people who weren't even, wasn't even on their radar to consider not investing in fossil fuels, not to extract till the last barrel of oil and the last, large animal is extinct. Maybe, hopefully, possibly. Anyway, that's our goal. That's what we're all about here. So this is to defeat, and of course the background is this dirty debt deal that Joe Biden negotiated with the House Speaker, the Republican Kevin McCarthy. And I got to say, I would not be surprised. I don't know this, but given Joe Biden's record, his long time, praise of, his lauding any kind of bipartisanship, his efforts to get Clarence Thomas on the Supreme Court, his efforts to have bipartisan support for the war on the people of Iraq, his efforts to privatize the student loan industry and to allow credit card issuers to charge usurious rates. I think all of that would strongly suggest that he was very, very comfortable dealing with Kevin McCarthy. And that is kind of what, but not exactly what, James K. Galbraith says in this piece in The Nation. I'm going to go through it. I never loved, I can't say I'm a big fan of, the hosts like when Randy Rhoads would talk about the homework that she wanted you to do. It's like, really? I don't feel like a radio program should be homework. It shouldn't be like school. It should be informative, yes, and entertaining, yes, but I don't think I need to do homework. Likewise, Professor Tom Hartman always bored the you-know-what out of me. I prefer hosts with great voices. Sorry, folks, that's not something I bring to the table. Like Ed Schultz, who know how to use them and who, really can bring some humor, some joy, and entertainment to the table. Randy could be funny. Tom, not so much. Stephanie is sometimes funny, but, that's all she is. It's just all whipped cream. There's no substance to her program. And in fact, when there is, it's the wrong kind. The Any Blue Will Do, hyper partisanship. You don't get that on my. All right, so the debt limit agreement entrenches long-term austerity. It was a huge GOP win. So per James K. Galbraith, the winner, and I'll make this full screen for just a moment, cut out a little bit of the bottom, is the man sitting on your left as you look at this photo, Kevin McCarthy. And the older gentleman on the right is just sort of, I guess, kind of checked out, doesn't care. Again, according to Galbraith. Don't totally share that view, though I feel that he's very, very persuasive, is Galbraith, when he goes over how bad this proposal is. Now, remember, it's not a done deal. It has to be voted through both the House and the Senate. We'll see if that happens. I'll get into the likelihood of that in a little bit. And frankly, folks, it doesn't look good. It looks like this is going to happen. I had this discussion with my mom yesterday, and I said, hey, I think we have a shot at maybe stopping this. And she's like, do you really think so? She said, usually when I hear a bad thing is planned, it's going to happen. It does happen. And I fear my optimism was unjustified, and my mother's pessimism was all too justified. So here's what how Galbraith gets into the details of this deal. All gains for the Republican side, benefiting oil and minerals industries, and we know that from the most valuable, the Mountain Valley Pipeline, MVP, Mountain Valley Pipeline. Obviously, that's a Joe Manchin project that will benefit frackers, the shale oil industry, and the natural gas industry, and will be a massive disaster for the environment in Virginia, which is already, and West Virginia, which is already seeing waters be fouled by methane leaks from those aspects, those parts of the pipeline that have come online or have been used in tests. There's already been a lot of leaks. The air's already being befouled. The water is already tainted. And this isn't even completed yet. It's not even being used except for a few test pumps. Also benefiting wealthy tax evaders, which Galbraith notes are bipartisan constituencies, although not the voting base of the Democratic Party. And then he includes the work requirements, the SNAP work rate. So people above a certain age will now have to go out and, apply for jobs and try to get jobs and go to McDonald's or, Walmart or the Dollar General or wherever to try to get some kind of a job. And that can be very onerous. You don't have a car, you have to drive, you have to burn gasoline, which we don't want people to do to begin with. Take buses, take 2 buses, 3 buses if you're fortunate enough to live where there may be some public transit. So obviously these are onerous requirements. Where I think Galbraith gets it wrong, I'm going to start right now here and say it. So he says they're all gains for the Republican side. Well, also for the Democrat side. The Democrats are also recipients, as he notes, bipartisan constituencies. I believe that Hillary Clinton got more money in toto from the oil and gas industry employees and others who make their living in those industries than Trump did in 2016. Biden has approved more drilling and extraction at this point in his administration than Trump had. And certainly there are many wealthy tax evaders, many billionaires in the Democratic Party as well. So it is a bipartisan bill. It is not just when he says gains for the Republican side, I guess he means for the Republican elected. But this is who the Democrats are also courting, the same people, the same donor class. And many of the Democratic representatives are themselves those very same wealthy tax evaders, people like the Pelosi family that maybe they're not evading taxes, but insider trading, pretty darn bad, right? And that she's like the staunchest defender of insider trading. Joe Manchin, self-dealing, dealing with his family for decades. A 30 millionaire, 40 millionaire, something like that. He tries to point out, because what Galbraith's argument is that Biden betrayed the Democratic Party. He betrayed the Democratic base. He betrayed the American people. Both parties are the parties of the rich and powerful. Both parties have abandoned you, unless you're rich and powerful. Maybe some of you are. And even if you are, you got to be really rich and really powerful for them to do anything much for you. Now, you may benefit, there may be some side benefits for you in terms of keeping your top marginal tax rate low, in terms of keeping your the estate tax low, so you'll and very high exemptions. The first now $12 million of an estate is not taxed, although that's going to go back down in a year or two, I believe. So you may benefit, and you might not be that, not a billionaire. But to actually have influence, you have to be a billionaire or damn close to it, or be able to bundle billionaires and their money. So it's both parties. It's the actual financial base of both parties that are responsible for this. They are both responsible for making life harder for the poorest people in America. And certainly Joe Biden is the leader of the Democratic Party, but we'll get into why other Democratic Party leaders are also complicit. And in fact, even Democratic progressives, by the way, I like the fact that I have this video so I can do that with my fingers and you can see it. The Democratic progressives themselves are complicit. So join me, 240-363-7190. Let's get into this. So what we just talked about there, Galbraith, and by the way, I said I don't like all the homework. I don't like making it hard. Here, yes, J.K. Galbraith, he's, I think, no longer at Harvard, now at University of Texas, but a professor. So yeah, maybe it's a little bit in detail. I try to not make it too hard for me to understand, because if it's too hard for me to understand, maybe it'll be too hard for you, although that may or may not be the case. I'm sure there's plenty. But I'm going to try to make it simple enough so that even I can figure this stuff out. So Galbraith is saying that all of these dispensations, whatever, that were done were ostensibly to meet this debt ceiling crisis, where the U.S. government would have had to stop spending, or couldn't spend at the same rates, or couldn't deficit spend at the same rate. And this would create this enormous crisis where the cost of issuing new debt would skyrocket, and people who depend on the feds couldn't get paid, and this and that. So Galbraith wants to just put that horrible fear, that anxiety about a potential default to rest. He said, no, it's fake. It's a hoax. They're just trying to scare you. There's no crisis. And I told you this yesterday, by the way. I said the exact same thing. I'm going to make a little bit of a different argument, though. He says the administration and they're overlapping, but I don't share all of Galbraith's views. So I agree there was no crisis. The administration had multiple pathways under the law and Constitution to defuse the debt ceiling without giving anything away. In other words, not giving dispensations to the oil and gas industry, not cutting back on IRS agents who audit billionaire tax cheats, not making it harder for some folks to get necessary SNAP assistance or housing assistance. So what are the options? Well, I always think of this as somewhat of a gimmick. Issue that platinum coin. So we've got a $1 trillion coin in the treasury. So therefore there's no debt because we've got this $1 trillion. So we really don't have any debt at all. That's one argument. I think that's kind of, it's games. It's playing games because the coin isn't in circulation, nor will it ever go into circulation. So it's really, it's just, if it did, then there'd be massive inflation, which, by the way, isn't the worst solution, right? Maybe you issue more debt, or you raise the supply of money so you can pay off your debt. That's what MMT talks about. But it does have real world consequences. I don't necessarily disagree with devaluing the currency on occasion, but we do have to understand their real world consequences. And I think a better solution than devaluing it, I've always said, at least right now, under where we have so many people with so much, is just to tax them. Because we should want, nobody has nothing. Everyone has enough and nobody has too much. And some people have way too much in America. Raise the taxes. That's the best way for the government to raise money and pay the debts, for sure. But, Galbraith's saying, well, you could have issued this platinum coin. Probably the Supreme Court wouldn't have blocked it. And in fact, some former director of the Mint says, no, the Supreme Court wouldn't have done anything. Of course, he was working for the Mint. So I don't know how, is he a lawyer? I don't know how knowledgeable or whether he's biased because it was his idea. But some other possible solutions from Galbraith, the professor, to the debt ceiling crisis without actually getting the Republicans through cajoling, through basically just giving away to them a lot of what they want, which is to cut spending, make life even more challenging, more difficult for poor, struggling, and working people, and then green light, more drilling, more extraction. So what Galbraith is saying, no, you got other solutions. We have much better solutions. And, he said, we could do that coin, which I have already said, I don't buy that one. I think it's gimmicky, but, and I don't, I'm not sure, I don't know whether the Supreme Court would buy it or not. But let's get into and this will have where Galbraith comes up with a solution that I actually do endorse, and one I've already recommended, by the way. So, other solutions. Treasury could have issued these perpetual bonds called consols, not covered by the SIM because they have no principal to repay. So basically a console is a investment where you give you don't really lend the government money, you pay them $100. They don't ever have to repay it to you, but they just promise that in perpetuity, or maybe it's not perpetuity, but 100 years, say, every year they'll pay you back $5 a year. So you'll in the end get $500 back, but you never get the 100 back. Whereas now, if you buy a treasury bill for, with a face value of $1,000, you pay $1,000. You might pay less. If you buy it from the treasury, usually you pay whatever the face value is. But then if you buy in the open market, the price could go up or down, depending on where interest rates are. But you buy a treasury bill, a $1,000 treasury bill at $5, 5%. So they're going to pay you $50 because that's 5% of 1,000 every year for 10, 20 years. Or maybe you pay a lot less. You pay $800, then you'll get $1,000 at the end of the term. So you get your principal plus interest back. There are various ways it works out. Strips, I don't want to get into all that. But the point is that you could issue, according to Galbraith, I don't know, again, sounds gimmicky, the console where you never get your principal back, you just get a lot of interest, which in the end adds up to a lot more than your principal. He says they could issue premium bonds. Now, this I thought did make some sense. I thought, yeah, premium bond, it's like stock, right? It's like prestige stock or some type of stock that gets paid back first, right? If the company goes bankrupt, the preferred stocks, like preferred stocks, the premium bond is exempt from perhaps the debt ceiling. So you could issue those and get a little higher interest rate back from, get a little more money, but you pay a little higher interest. That could alleviate the crisis. Well, another option is, and I think this is the best solution, let checks bounce. That's it, right? Fine. Who's going to be hurt? Who's going to be hurt? You let those treasury bills bounce. All right, well, sorry. Can't pay them right now. No, well, maybe we'll pay them later. We'll see. Those subsidies we sent you for drilling in the Arctic, no, we're not going to pay them. Sorry. Suck it. Those are options. Now, I'm not saying they wouldn't lead to lawsuits. I wouldn't say there's not going to be some type of blowback. But better than negotiating with the corporate elites, better than negotiating with the billionaire class. Seems clear to me. That would have been a much better solution than what Biden did. But Biden wanted a deal. He wants that Mountain Valley Pipeline through. That's what Politico told us yesterday. That's what I've talked to Maury Johnson about. The Democrats, not just Biden, many of the Democrats are getting exactly what they want out of this deal. This is a true bipartisan deal. These are two sheep cutting up the lamb, which is us, the public, the sacrificial lamb. I'm going on, look, it's depressing to think, right? We don't have representatives who are looking out for our best interests. We simply don't. There may be a few, but by and large, they're not. Even people that we held out high hopes for, people like AOC, or if you're in my congressional district, Jamie Raskin. You're like, oh, wait, Jamie went after those evil Republicans. He went after that horrible meanie Donald Trump. He tried to impeach him. How could he not be on our side? He's got to be. You don't know what you're talking about, Hal. So that could be the argument, right? But you could say that, but it's not true. These people these representatives aren't on our side. And I'm going to give you a little more specifics on that in a little bit. What we do know now, from the Nation article, from what we've discussed, from who supports this deal, it's bad for the American public. It's bad for the environment. It's bad for poor, struggling, and working Americans. It's short-term good for the billionaire class. It's short-term good for the extraction industries. Of course, in the end, we all are on the same boat, the same starship, the same planet, and we're destroying her. So I don't even get how people who are in the billionaire class can be happy about this. But I guess they feel that their grip is even greater. So what is the solution? Is there an answer? I've been saying we got to figure out an alternative. There has to be an alternative to the Democratic Party. There has to be, or we will not solve this terrible, terrible, terrible crisis. In fact, things will only get worse. Yes, I just poked my watching you just told me it's in there. All right, so what is Galbraith going here? Now, this is history he's sharing with us because Biden has said we can't have a default, right? And Galbraith's saying, of course you can, just don't pay. Big deal. And I'm kind of that mind, right? I mean, it is a bit of a big deal. It's not like it's a nothing burger. It's a deal. It's a big deal. But let the Republicans know. Let the corporate Dems know. Let Joe Manchin know we're not going to negotiate at the point of a gun. And let the billionaire class know that if you're going to hold us hostage, you're not going to get paid on your treasury bills. At least not until we ratchet down the high pressure tactics and until we come up with solutions that really will, in the long run, lead to reduced government debt, like raising taxes on the billionaire class. Biden says, hey, we've never defaulted. We can't default now. And Galbraith says that's not true. Here's an example. In 1933, Roosevelt took us off the gold standard and said that the debts that we owe, we're going to pay about $20 on every 35. So he basically wrote off over a third of the debt owed at that time by the government. Which, yeah, I mean, if you devalue the dollar from 35, you devalue ounce of gold from $35 to $20, basically what you're doing is you're devaluing the dollar. So that it's, no, I guess he raised it, right? He almost doubled the value, the price of gold. So he almost cut in half, almost 50% cut. So I said more than a third, a little bit less than half of the value of a U.S. debt was eliminated. Basically, if the U.S. government owed you $1,000, then they would pay you next week after Roosevelt devalued the dollar. They would pay you the same $1,000, but it would be worth $600 in gold. So presumably prices would rise and your buying power would shrink very significantly. It didn't drop quite as much as the value of gold did. Or rather, well, gold wasn't devalued. The price of goods in the store didn't drop as greatly as the value of the dollar, but they did drop. So what Galbraith is saying is that is tantamount to a default. It has some of the same impact. It's not quite what I would call a default either. It's not where, I mean, they did pay, they just paid less. They paid in cheaper dollars. The U.S. government did. So again, I mean, I think Galbraith's arguments, I agree with him that Biden shouldn't have let himself be held hostage, which he really wasn't anyway, because he wanted the deal. But I agree with him it's a bad deal. I agree with him we're all harmed by it. Some of his arguments I'm not going to fully embrace. But I wanted to bring this up because I wanted you to see just how badly this deal is being viewed by progressives and how there were alternatives. Most, in my view, the most likely one saying to Congress, yeah, go ahead, make my day. I'm going to go ahead and let this, you don't want to raise the debt ceiling, don't. I don't really care. I'm not going to negotiate with you. And we'll just default if that's what happens. That's what I would have recommended. That's what I have recommended. All right, 240-283-7262, 283-7262. And Galbraith makes one final point, which is very, very important here, and I do want to share it with you. That and I don't really think it was a default to say, okay, well, we're going to devalue the dollar versus gold. We're going to take the dollar off the gold standard, and therefore dollars will be worth a lot less. We'll pay you what we owe you in dollars, but it'll be worth a lot less than it was last week. I don't really view that as a default. I understand it has similar impact in that creditors are getting paid back less. The point, though, that Galbraith wants you to keep in mind is that by devaluing the debts, the federal government had a lot more money available to help poor, struggling, and working people, to pursue the NIRA, National Industrial Relations Act, later became the National Recovery Act, National Industrial Recovery Act, later became the NRA, National Recovery Act, had that money, and also because of the dollar being devalued, there was inflation, significant inflation, which led to higher wages. And that all helped with the recovery and affected a vast transfer of wealth to the working class. So yes, that's what Biden should do, if not in fact, but in legal principle. And in a massive dig at Biden, Galbraith says Roosevelt was a fighter, obviously saying, not just implying, but just flat out saying Biden's not a fighter. Well, Biden does fight for what he wants, but what he wants is not what is good for the American people. So I don't know if I would say he's not a fighter. He's just not a fighter for poor, struggling, working Americans. And just to wrap up, because there's been a lot here on Galbraith, but I want to just get to this final point here, and then we'll move on. Why, and I promise you we'll be done. I'll be done by, this will be an hour program at longest. So Galbraith ends. The debt ceiling charade was a farce, but revealing a tragedy that the president didn't want to fight. Well, he does want to fight. He wants to fight with progressives. He wants to give Joe Manchin what Joe Manchin wants. He wants to give the oil and gas industry what they want, and he's prepared to fight for that. He has an opportunity with the debt ceiling. He did not want to use the powers he had to protect and defend the American public. That's for sure true. And he never has. He's never, why would anyone think something different about Joe Biden? He did not want to stand with the Democrats in Congress. Well, I don't agree with that. I don't buy that. There are plenty of Democrats who support this. Or his constituents in the Democratic Party. Well, I think his constituents are the multimillionaire class. He did want to be seen sitting side by side with the Republican Speaker of the House and to get the plaudits of the pundit class for compromise. Well, I'm sure that is true. I get that. But this explanation or this criticism of Biden that he didn't want to stand with the Democratic Party gives far too much credit to the Democratic Party. It is far too praising of the Democratic Party. It suggests that the Democratic Party is kind of against what Joe Biden is doing. And that's just absurd. Where Galbraith would have ever gotten that, I have no idea. We will prove in a second that that's not the case, that the Democratic Party, the Democratic Party has a chance to prove this. They can vote against it. They can vote it down. They have a majority in the Senate. They could easily vote this down. By the way, there's Biden with his new buddy, McCarthy. So if, in fact, Galbraith is correct and Biden's actions were counter to the Democratic Party's preferences, then show us, prove it. Is that going to happen? Because this deal is not done yet, not as far as I know, unless it's happened, in the past half hour. So let's find out. There's plenty of opportunity for the Democrats to show that they don't agree with Joe Biden. They don't like because really what Galbraith is saying, the Democrats they're just kind of stuck. They have to do what Joe Biden wants. That's completely not true at all. They don't have to do what Joe Biden wants. They want to do what Joe Biden wants. Your representative, more than likely, even if you're in a deep blue, dark blue, progressive district, more than likely wants to do exactly what Joe Biden wants. And you can see here why. How do we know this? Well, McCarthy has projected confidence that the bill will pass the House on a bipartisan vote expected today. Well, how could he be so confident that the Democrats will go along, that there'll be a bipartisan vote if Joe Biden weren't doing what Democrats want? Democrats want this deal. There's a lot more evidence. So when we know this, we have got to stop with this. Please, no more any blue will do. No more I can't afford my principles, or people can't afford the principle of holding their nose, and refusing to vote Democratic because of Trump. But Democrats are just as bad. They're going along with this deal. In fact, they're going along with it perhaps more so, or they will likely go along with this more so than the so-called Freedom Caucus, which is really angry about this, or at least says they are. Mad as a hornet, said they're going to vote. Now, to be fair, 4 Democrats on the Rules Committee joined 2 Republicans on the Rules Committee in voting against the deal. So, in fact, more Democrats voted against it. But I think that's performative. I think they were green-lighted by the Speaker. Sorry, not the Speaker. He is not the Speaker. McCarthy's the Speaker. Hakeem Jeffries, the Democratic minority leader, has told Democrats, yeah, you can go ahead. Some of them. I don't know how many. I don't know how many votes I need. I don't know how many. It's kabuki theater. They're playing you for a sucker. Yes, a few Democrats like AOC and Jamal Bowman and Jamie Raskin maybe will vote no on this deal. But look what House Minority Leader says, Hakeem Jeffries. Democrats are committing to make sure that we do our part and avoid the default. How about doing your part for the American people and not exacerbating the world-destroying climate cataclysm? Maybe that's what your part should be, right? And not worrying so much about avoiding a default that will mostly hurt wealthy people. So it's clear, right, that the Democrats are going to figure out, Hakeem Jeffries is going to figure out which Democrats he's going to let vote against the deal. Now you might say, well, Hal, that's really not fair. I mean, my progressive legislator, Jim McGovern, who I actually kind of like in Massachusetts, he's going to vote against it. I think he really is serious. Oh, really? You really do? You really think so? Every single Democrat voted for Hakeem Jeffries to be minority leader. If you don't want to be whipped to either support this bill or be given an exemption, a favor that the speaker, the minority leader, is going to call on another occasion. Well, I let you vote against this bill this time, Ro Khanna. So you got to vote for another bill this next time. McCarthy said he hasn't spoken to Jeffries about how many Democratic votes he'll need. Right. When McCarthy figures it out, how many Freedom Caucus people he's going to let vote no, and he's going to have more trouble. Because some of those aren't going to vote yes, no matter what McCarthy says. McCarthy's kind of got a situation where he could even be recalled as Speaker of the House. But he'll work it, he'll figure it out, and he'll call up his good friend and say, hey, Hakeem, these are how many votes I need from you. If you think that your Democratic representative isn't part of that, then all I can say to you is, he voted, she voted, they voted for Hakeem Jeffries to be. The fix is in. The fix is in. If you don't like that, let's come up with an alternative to the Democratic Party. 240-363-7190. So Jeffries and McCarthy have committed. They're already working together, right, in a bipartisan fashion. Those are the two wolves looking at the sheep to cut up, which is us, the sacrificial lamb. They've already committed. They're going to decide amongst themselves how many members of each of their 2 caucuses in their party they're going to let vote against this bill, knowing that They're going to have a lot of pressure on them from some members to say, let me vote no, let me vote no. Let me go to my constituents and say, oh, I voted no, knowing it's a load of crap, especially on the Democratic end. The Republicans really held McCarthy's feet to the fire. They really made it tough to get him elected Speaker of the House, and they extracted a lot of concessions from him. Jeffries, no concessions. They just all voted lockstep. Every last Democrat voted for Hakeem Jeffries in the House. Every last House Democrat voted for him to be the minority leader, notwithstanding the fact that he is the chosen candidate of Wall Street and AIPAC. If you think your Democrat is different, explain that to me. Explain how that happened. All right, looks like the House is over, right? It's gonna pass the House. I hope I'm wrong. Lord, I've been wrong before many, many times. Looks like it's gonna pass the House. What about the Senate? Maybe, we have a majority in the Senate. We have a majority in the Senate, so maybe we can stop it in the Senate. Of course, and they need 60 votes because I think there's going to be some kind of a filibuster. There's some kind of requirement of 60. I'm not sure. If it passes the House, it goes to the Democratic-led Senate where it would need 60 votes. Wow. There's 50 Democrats plus Kamala. So the Democrats could stop at the Senate, right? Well, Chucky Schumer says, no. I'm already working with my good friend Mitch. This is your Democratic Party. This is all of you who say, oh, the Democrats are better. That when push comes to shove, when the rubber hits the road, they're right there, green-lighting massive fossil fuel extraction projects, reducing tax collection efforts against the wealthy, making it harder for poor, struggling, and working people to get the benefits that they need to live just a decent life. Besides telling you we have got to work together to get out of this horrible, toxic duopoly, I have nothing else to say, really, except, stick your head out the window and scream, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. I don't know that did Howard Beale any good. Why am I so upset? Why am I so just livid about all this? Well, maybe this headline kind of helps you get there. It's not all of it. I care about poor people. I care about struggling people. I care about the people in Ukraine and Eastern Europe who are victims of this horrible war, this vicious, murderous war where hundreds of thousands are being killed, slaughtered, and our support of it isn't in the least going to be impacted by this debt ceiling crisis. So I'm upset about all that. I'm upset about what the headline you see right there. Climate shocks are making parts of America uninsurable, and it just got worse. I would say uninhabitable. So for my California viewers and listeners, good luck getting home insurance. It looks like it's going to become harder and harder, and understandably so. There's no fire season anymore. There's just a fire year. It's all fire all the time. And there are plenty of other potential crises, right? Floods or fires, not wildfires, but fires because of earthquakes. And insurers are just saying, forget it. I don't want to do it anymore. State Farm, we don't need this. We don't need this market. Find someone else to insure your home. Find someone else to protect you besides that firefighter going into that burning house there. Because we're just not going to do it. We just can't afford it. We're paying off billions and billions of dollars. We've got to get super expensive reinsurance to cover the homes that we do cover, that we've already issued insurance for. We're just not going to issue new policies. That's what the climate cataclysm is doing to our country. The very largest state has just lost its largest home insurer. And California is hardly the only state that's facing an insurance crisis. I would note that if you're asking why would I talk about insurance when this is a live stream ostensibly about the debt crisis, well, the debt crisis dirty deal that Joe Biden just entered into with McCarthy will exacerbate, will worsen the climate cataclysm because more drilling, more permits issued, less questions, kicking the can down the road till 2050. More wildfires, more extreme weather, more, massive rainfall on some occasions. That's what we're looking at. And fewer insurance companies willing to take that risk on. And as I mentioned, it's not just California by any means. So the Times has a good article here. Actually, have to give them credit. I learned a lot. Always hope to learn. And I give them credit where it's deserved, because they so often don't deserve any credit for their coverage. But here they really are giving us the scoop on what insurance companies are doing. And country, it's getting tougher and tougher and tougher to get that insurance if you own a home. Big problem, right? I mean, I think you would want it. And if you borrow money, if you take out a mortgage, you really need, or you're not going to be able to even get the home at all. So in California, we just mentioned State Farm's no longer going to issue new policies. In eastern Kentucky, where there were massive storms, that's coal country. Flood insurance is set to quadruple. A lot of poor people in eastern Kentucky, in those hollers, whatever you want to call them, and hills, they may own their own homes. Those homes may be worth less than 6 figures. People who have motor homes, mobile homes, they need insurance too. It's going to be very, very expensive. These are people who could barely probably afford it, if at all. In Louisiana, the market is in crisis. Again, many floods in hurricane state, millions of dollars in subsidies just so that insurers will come and do business in Louisiana. This is because of the climate cataclysm. I read this stuff and I'm like, how could anyone doubt it? How could RFK Jr., because look, obviously I don't want to vote for Joe Biden. I'm not going to vote for Joe Biden. So maybe RFK Jr. How can he express the doubt he expressed before that crowd at the Bitcoin event where he says, well, they're going to use the climate crisis to take away our rights? No, it's the climate crisis that's taking away our rights. The state that probably is in the worst shape, and it's very understandable, I would say it's either maybe, it's either Florida or Texas, but according to the Times right now, Florida's facing it the worst. Can't get storm coverage. Most big insurers aren't even in the state. So California's lost one insurance company, the biggest, State Farm, at least for now, but most aren't even in the state at all. Apparently State Farm will still keep the policies it has. It's not going to issue new ones. You can't even get insurance except from small companies that may be strapped, and you can't be certain, you can't feel like they're AAA rated, so you know that if there's a big storm, there's a flood that causes hundreds or thousands of homes to be destroyed, you don't know that your insurer will have the money to pay you. You could be out. What's the solution? According to Tom Corringham, I never heard of him, he's a research economist. He says allowing people to live in homes that are uninsurable or prohibitively expensive to insure was unsustainable. Obviously, that is not a good policy. We don't want people living in homes that are uninsurable for a lot of reasons. One is because obviously they're taking on a huge risk, but another because the cost ultimately of living in that home is greater than the value. What Corringham is saying is if a home is uninsurable or prohibitively expensive to insure, what that means is that at some point the home is likely to be destroyed and you'll lose everything. Right? I mean, that's why it's so expensive to insure, because the insurance companies are thinking, whatever I charge, I'm going to have to pay to build a new home, because I will have to at some point. So yeah, it's not a good idea. We don't. And then if they do build a new home in that same location, that home itself will also be uninsurable. So Corringham says we have insurers refusing to write new policies in certain areas. We're not sure how that's in anyone's best interest other than insurers. So I read that statement. We have insurers refusing to write new policies in certain areas, like the coast of California, areas that are beset by wildfires. And he goes on to say, yeah, I guess it's a he, Tom. We're not sure how that's in anyone's best interest other than insurers. I'm trying, I cannot understand how any economist would ever say something like that. That to me is like the world's stupidest statement. Of course, it's in everyone's interest. The reason for that market signal is to tell us we shouldn't be living there. We shouldn't be living on some slope that by early to mid-June is just completely dried out chaparral that will burn up in a heartbeat if there's a lightning storm, or if somebody drops not even a lighted match, a red match, right? It's you lit your cigarette with it or something and it's not completely out. If it touches a little straw, the whole side of the mountain is going to go up in flames. Yeah, that is in everyone's interest to know that it's in all of our interest for the insurers not to cover those homes, because otherwise we're just going to be in a worse situation. This is why I will call myself a capitalist, because the market is telling us in clear and unmistakable signals, don't build there, don't live there. Move to high ground. And if we are serious about taking those signals, then guess what we do? We stop burning fossil fuels, we move to high ground, we greatly reduce our consumption, and we raise the price of fossil fuels so we stop consuming them. That's going to do it for me. I did it 1 hour. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll be back tomorrow with Carlos.